Okay, now for something different. Yes, I have moved back. It's great to be back at JCU and it's great to be in the Northwest. I was a very frequent visitor here in an earlier life and I'm now largely based here, living here. So in the land of the Kalkadoons, it's a wonderful part of the world and I'd encourage you to come and stay for longer, all of you. And if you want to read a great book, there are stories about Battle Mountain and the Great Battle, and it's a fascinating story. The Americans have made really exciting movies out of much less, and sometimes I think we don't acknowledge some of the really interesting things that happened in the great battle between cultures in the past. And here we are very much in Aboriginal Australia, and I enjoy being here, so thank you. Something completely different, it's a red lion. So I'm presenting work from my days at University of Tasmania Rural Clinical School. I still have a small appointment there related to PhD supervision. I have to warn you that I've got nothing to do with business or intelligence, and I relabeled it a smarter tracking system. We all know that tracking our graduates, if we want to work out what happens with our graduates and contribution to workforce, we have to track them. And I don't know about the rest of you, but tracking medical students is really hard. Has anyone tried to track their graduates from any program? Yeah, well, if they're anything like medical graduates, they disappear off the face of the planet at graduation. They maintain dozens of email addresses and they give people the wrong ones. And often give fictitious addresses or addresses they once lived at. So why is this important? Well, with the new RHMT funding in particular, proving what we do is working is becoming increasingly important. So it's already emerging that some things that we've been doing for 20 years are probably not so smart or not so worth the investment. That is sending people out to lovely rural towns for a weekend. Now, I used to do this. When I started doing it at Sydney, we'd take them to Mudgee when the picnic races was on, and the winery would throw up a beano for them. Now, I have to tell you that anyone could live in Mudgee, close to the wineries really. It's a beautiful part of the country and it's not really contributing anything other than very short-term spike in interest in possibly living in a place like Mudgee, which isn't really like the rest of rural Australia. So I'm presenting something which is really about how to track people. I've been involved with two of these processes. So one is at JCU, where social media is the basis of a very effective tracking system which has tracked about 92% of medical graduates over many years, and some of you will have seen the papers. I was involved with setting that up. And at the University of Tasmania we discovered that I was trying to work out where the University of Tasmania medical graduates went, and it was very difficult to work out because nobody knew where they were. So we came up with a different model which we're going to kind of talk about briefly. Now, there are a lot of evaluation challenges in tracking people. I've already mentioned some of them. These are others. It's actually very difficult to track large numbers, but it's difficult to track small numbers. There's a whole lot of things in qualitative research that are difficult as well. And I think all of us face the challenge in proving to our funders that what we do is not just nice and enjoyable, but actually effective. Now, this is for the cynics amongst you. Okay, so this is what it's like to try to pull together a manual tracking system. Anyone ever tried to do this? I have. It's really unrewarding. Okay. There's never any staff or other resources really allocated. It's an add-on job. You only ever really manage to get a very bare minimum data set if you can agree on what that is. The matching and the cleaning and the checking is manual and sporadic, tedious and error-prone. Then if you want to link it to rurality, in my career, I think we're onto our fourth major national way of defining rurality and remoteness, and it's really frustrating for researchers because they don't necessarily map to each other very well. So all those papers I wrote years ago are kind of very difficult to interpret through the modern lens of the modified Monash model, which is now the current one. And they're often put into little office-based Excel or Access databases, which are not very powerful according to the researchers I talk to. So there's further many different sources of data. You don't know how accurate they are. You have no access. This is where the business intelligence guy comes in, because he did this. User level system. So this is going beneath the data and working out how does this actually access data, can you combine it? And so getting the right skills for doing this is actually quite difficult as well. And then increasingly data security and governance are becoming really important issues. So sometimes these databases are collected without specific ethics approval or oversight from ethics approval committees, which is risky. So, I'm not a computer scientist, but it's a great slide and it's the same colour red as the lion. So, those of you who love data are going to like the next bit, because this is really about how you do it, and it's written by a systems analyst. Now, we recently had to revise the paper for a journal. There is a paper about this coming out soon, and I had to remove all the techie stuff because nobody understood it. And I've talked him into, I've written a user-friendly version for health professional educators. He's writing a paper for an IT journal, okay? It's very complicated. Please don't ask me a question about business intelligence IT. But if you look at the rules, stand back, it does make sense. So it's a very explicit rule-driven process. It captures the right knowledge and it automates. This stops people having to manually enter data, manually check data. There is a governance process of ethics approval. Every request to access goes through proper request and approval processes. And it's not just about proving we meet RHMT targets. There's often opportunities for collaborative research and development of innovative models. Now, I apologise that this is initially medical students of one university only, but that's what was under our control. But we do have now a secure, sustainable system. It's kind of sitting on a desk in Burnie at the Rural Clinical School, but as I think the next slide shows, this is a metaphorical concept that's in our minds. It actually doesn't exist in a single computer or in a database. This is not a database, but it accesses data from many sources, and at the moment the three main ones are the medical school's outcomes database, a whole lot of internal data unique to UTAS about student numbers, their placements, where they've gone for how long, their results, and their career preference data, where that is connected, and then lots of external sources, so AHPRA, Frame, and My School, and a whole lot of SES data, and all sorts of things can be collected and added in. I mention AHPRA because people think, well, doctors at least are trackable through AHPRA, but they're not. Between graduation and completing specialty training, AHPRA database is useless at tracking people. Specialty training in medicine is this kind of 6 to 10 year void in terms of databases. It's very difficult to follow people through. So that's it. Isn't it beautiful? Okay, so we're no longer talking about a database, we're talking about a data warehouse. So I like the analogy I like to think of, and I ran this by my business intelligence expert who looked at me very strangely and then said, oh, I guess so. You can imagine if you've seen on the television the new Amazon storage depots, warehouses that are completely automated. Somebody in an air-conditioned box keys in an inquiry, pick up this item, and the computer knows that that item is in row 34 on the 15th level on the left at the back. So this trolley just goes down and automatically stands up and does this and pulls data, comes out with a box, and there it is. Whoops, ready to go. That's what this is. I hope that makes sense. This is actually about accessing data automatically through the web on request from its original source. So it's not a database. It's a very interesting concept. Very granular data, code down to a very small level. It's accurate with MMM and RA coding. It's a further level of checking and cleaning data, but for instance AHPRA, with whom you have to have agreements, very formal legal agreements with all these external people, because you don't actually hold their data, you access their data through their systems for a specific query. It's very important, but this improved the AHPRA match rate of our graduates at University of Tasmania from 68 to 95%. Now the system here, the more manual social media based system, which is run I think by Torres Woolley at JCU, and I had quite a hand in setting that up years ago, it achieves about 91, 92%. It's very, very good. But when you think about most of the studies you'll see on longitudinal cohort studies, they struggle to get over 50% response rate. And here we have two ways in Australia of approaching it to get in the 90s. One, which is much more social media, user-driven, manual. This is automated, but therefore may be better. There's over 900 fields of information, all semi-automated, cleaned, everything's linked. What happens is it depends upon the query you put in, and I'm afraid I don't know how to put a query into it. You need to be a business intelligence system analyst type person. So we have created a great system that nobody can... No, that's not right. Gary Walker can do it, but you can't have him. Okay? But there is a way of getting access to this. Very quick reporting. It takes him about 30 minutes. You give him a complicated question, he goes away, comes back in 30 to 40 minutes with all the data and the answer, because he knows what he's doing. Okay, so this is where we get into the business stuff. Yeah, there apparently are a set of standard data warehouse principles. I don't know what they are, but they're there. All this is about interoperability and transferability across systems. As I say at the bottom point there is still a need for a researcher to frame the right question. So that's where I think I'm useful in this. That Gary can't frame the question, but I can't interrogate the system. So people like us need to work together. So these are the interesting opportunities and challenges. Where we don't get student consent, we obviously can't track, but that's actually a very small number. We have to really push this as a means of getting there well, and there is a bit of resistance at the moment to people handing over access to their private data. And I understand that, but I have to say this has nothing to do with Facebook, all right? Nothing to do with Google. This is a protected system. It's as safe as the APRA system. Now, I'm sure somebody can hack into that, but the opportunities are that this could be extended to every health professional training institution and every profession in the country. Size does not matter. Basically, the architecture is there, the 900 fields are there. We could add a few fields that were irrelevant to others, but then we just simply add in the access to other databases. So I think this is a really potentially very exciting thing which other workforce researchers might want to get involved with. That'll do. Thanks very much.